So thank you to all of you who are here. Hopefully we will give you an enlightening and enjoyable panel conversation. I know El Seco, who follows the panel, will give you a literally eye-opening presentation. We have a really excellent panel of thinkers, strategic thinkers, as well as doers, here to share some of their ideas on the future. We'll be talking to Rishad Tobaccowala of Publicis and Denuo, the Denuo division, and one of the true thinkers of our industry. Nikki Mendonça, there is an N in the name, for those of you who are taking notes, who's with EMEA, headquartered in London with 64 offices?
54 markets.
54 markets. And Damian Burns, who is head of agency relationships, EMEA, for Google. And, you know, as he said, we have to address this issue of Google being the frenemy in the new language that's rising up around companies like Google and their role in our industry. I think this is a fascinating time for all of us in this business. And it's an especially fascinating time for those of you who have been able to stay for the duration of this conference and able to see this panel where we're really going to focus in on the future and where we're really going to focus in on the opportunities that are arising. It's no accident, and it's not just technology that's driving the changes in our business. This is a fascinating time, and as an economist and somewhat of a historian in the media industry, I look for historical precedent. And you really need to look back 100 years to when we moved from the agrarian age to the industrial age, and when we moved from a one-on-one community, rural environment to an urban environment, to an industrial environment, when people moved from the countries to the cities, when we moved from the farm agrarian society to the industrial age, driven by the mass assembly line, which led to mass communities, to mass merchandising, to mass marketing, to mass media, mass advertising. And today we're moving, that was a 30-year period. It began in around 1890 with the invention, the creation by Henry Ford of the assembly line, and it lasted until about the beginning of World War I, 1919, 1920, a 30-year period. And I would argue that we're in a comparable 30-year period today that began with the introduction in 1993 of Mosaic, the first web browser. And if you look at the time period now, 1993, if we look at the same 30-year period, we're 16 years in, 15, 16 years in. So we meet here at the Monaco Media Forum right at the midpoint of this 30-year cycle of major transformation. And the first 15 years have been about development of new technology. It's been about disruption. It's been about change. The next 15 years are about solutions, new opportunities, growth, expansion, and a recreation of our industries and our businesses. So I publish forecasts and analyses of the marketplace, and as we look at 2007, which was the last positive year both domestically in the US and globally for advertising and marketing, it's the first time in history we've had 3 consecutive downward years, 2008, 2009, and projected into 2010. Also projected for advertising, slight downturn in 2011. We're not going to really see downturn in our business until 2012. And we're seeing significant downturn in the traditional media, while we are seeing growth in video game advertising. We'll see online video advertising grow to a $4 billion business in the US and $5 to $6 billion internationally by 2012. Video game advertising, $1.5 billion industry over the next couple of years. Social, community, word-of-mouth, conversational, $1.5 billion. Where are those dollars coming from? And I think as we focus on advertising versus subscriber, free versus paid, we also have to look at this other category called below-the-line marketing budgets. We have to look at the promotional budgets, the direct marketing budgets, this consumer sales promotion like coupon sweepstakes, trade promotion, slotting allowances, merchandising, point of purchase, event, and other below-the-line dollars that represent 3 times the spending by marketers that they do on advertising. And for some marketers like Coca-Cola, it's as much as 9 or 10 times being put into non-advertising marketing budgets. Much of Google's revenues come from these non-marketing budgets today. And as we look at the economy going forward, I think we really have to look at the opportunity to reinvent our businesses. And that's what I'd like to talk to our panelists today about. And Damian, I'd like to start with you in the context of how do you see reinventing the advertising business from the Google perspective as you look at your agency partners, and what are your recommendations and guidelines that you'd suggest?
Okay, I guess I'd like to start where you kind of talked about the frenemy epithet. The 2 things I would say to that are, one, I think rumours of the friction between Google and agencies are greatly exaggerated, to paraphrase someone else. Secondly, I think that Google is emblematic of the internet, so that when people are talking about us, they're actually often referring to the internet in a broader sense, the kind of the destabilizing nature of innovation. And you know, we're trying to drive the kind of equilibrium between that opportunity and the tumultuous change that's going on. When it comes to agencies themselves and the challenges they face, you know, I think my 2 panelists are probably better equipped to talk, but I'm happy to. I think that the change or the choice, whether you need to revisit structures, is not one based on choice. I think this reset button or this reboot is being pressed by the consumer.
So if you were brought in by Nikki or Rishad as a consultant,
I'd last 2 weeks.
And in those 2 weeks, what would be your goal if you could communicate 1 or 2 key points that you think are absolutely critical, even though they might get you fired from that job?
Sure.
What would they be?
Okay, I think it would be down to some basic principles around structure. An agency should reappraise what they do, what they're good at, perhaps what they don't do and should do. I think they need to decipher the opportunities. There's a lot going on, there's a lot of noise out there, and what is going to deliver value to their business isn't necessarily the next big thing. There's a lot of stuff that goes under the radar in terms of its value to the agency world. I kind of...
Such as? What would you say goes under
the
radar?
Well, you know, I think if you revisit basic principles, you know, I think that 80-90% of what agencies spend their money on is not digital. So how are you leveraging the majority of what you do for the benefit of all you do? How are you tying, you know, I think TV, if somebody invented TV tomorrow, we'd make a hell of a fuss about it. How are you leveraging that medium and what it does, for example, how it drives search queries when you run a TV ad? These agencies, Omnicom, WPP, Publicis, are in a fantastic position to fuse media from a coordination and a planning perspective, but also from a measurement.
But the reality is that the marketers assign budgets to them, and they may put budgets in different silos, whether it's within the same holding company or different holding companies. They may have digital here and network television over there. So you go in and you're focused on very specific objectives with a company. What role can you play in helping them integrate across different channels? Sure,
it's a very, very good point, and I could probably talk for 15 minutes. I'll keep it to 1. I think the relationship between the likes of Google and other players of a similar nature in this space are very different to the kind of media owner or supplier relationships of the past. Before, an agency would drive the relationship on the basis of, you know, delivering pricing, delivering first-to-market opportunities, having input in, you know, in a whole kind of spectrum of traditional media areas. With us, the dimensions of the relationship are not solely based on advertising or advertising investment. You know, we're working with Omnicom across a whole host of dimensions, including technology layers, operational infrastructure. You know, we're having conversations around those kind of things. It's not this one-dimensional, we buy advertising, what can you do for us? I think agencies perhaps need to remap their relationships and ascribe a set of dimensions to the value that media owners, technology companies such as ourselves can provide them.
you know, you've built a multi-billion-dollar company without really having the need for the relationships with the traditional media agencies, the traditional advertising agencies. Much of the search revenues have come from direct marketing budgets, from sales budgets that aren't even under their control. That's why you don't see that much erosion from traditional media with the growth of search. Why have you been so eager and desperate to get into the traditional media world where there's so much dysfunction? You've built a newspaper business that wasn't, you know, that didn't really succeed. You're building a television business. You've tried the radio business. You've really tried to get into traditional media. Why?
It's quite simple. There's a return path of value. We've got a lot to learn from the agencies. And if we don't have the relationships, if we're not in there every day, we're going to miss out on a whole lot of learning. And I'm not just talking about advertising. I'm talking about our products. You know, our engineers are listening to these guys, and it's informing on our product roadmap. They're, you know, they're surfacing their needs. They're providing a very, very well-informed appraisal of our products. So there's an immense value. You can't just do something on an interface. There's far many more kind of touch points that need to be addressed.
Nikki talks about the ability to learn from the agencies, and you know, in the research I do in the ad community, Google consistently comes up at the very top in terms of educated sales organization, supportive sales organization, innovation, information, tools, and resources. What have you learned in your business from Google and the way they've approached your business?
We've learnt quite a lot, and going back to what Damian said with regards to the nature of the relationship being so different versus historical relationships that we've had with some media vendors, I think that's really because of a lot of things, but primarily because they sit on a lot of data, which actually makes their entire team much more informed, and hence much more valuable to our planning teams. I have found, whenever I have interfaced with Google, YouTube, that they're incredibly commercial, positively so, which is also very important to us because we are migrating our whole business from a focus on media metrics to business metrics. So it's incredibly important to us that we work with partners who are focused on performance.
If I can, this issue of performance obviously comes up constantly in return on investment, and marketers' need for return on investment. But in a survey I did, a conversational survey with a number of major marketers, and we talked about this very issue of performance from advertising. And the bottom line was they were less concerned about return on investment from advertising than they were from their promotional activities, which were designed to drive sales. Advertising was more typically designed to drive awareness, and they were less concerned about ROI. So as you shift to this bit from metrics to, you know, media metrics to business metrics, how do you convince your clients to care about this?
Oh, the clients are just as voracious as we are, because they have to explain, they have to defend why they are spending a certain amount of money to their board, their CFO, etc. They don't want, you know, there's a certain amount of rigor that goes with rationalizing why they're spending such an amount of money. Therefore, they are just as keen to be focused on performance metrics as we are, and they're pressurizing us. There are difficulties, obviously, and you hinted at the silo structure still that exists with some clients, which is difficult, which is challenging, but that is all changing.
It's just you and me. There's no audience here. There's no media. This is not going to go on YouTube. It's just us. And when it comes down to what the clients really care about, the pricing you can generate from media and the cost efficiencies versus the marketing effectiveness, how would you weight it on a 1 to 100 scale? You know.
Well, the difficulty is that they want both, and there is an equal focus on both. I would say that 2009, because of the year that it has been, there has been probably much more focus on the price rather than the value. So that has been challenging. The other dynamic is, of course, the procurement director, the supply chain director, has now gained far more control on the client side versus marketing, and that has also accelerated and increased the focus on pricing. So that has been particularly challenging in 2009. I think that we're going to see a little bit more of an addressing of the balance and a rebalance in 2010 and 2011.
I think
but when I
that's a
say
part of
redressing
the
the
shift.
balance, I still say a clear focus on the performance. You know, we still have to justify and fully rationalize exactly how much a client should spend in terms of their marketing investment, exactly where they should spend it and how they should spend it, and the focus on us now as a communications network to measure and evaluate everything we do is more aggressive than it ever has been. I mean, the focus is
And
has
in that
increased
context, we know how competitive it's been in the media agency business, the pressure that's on you, the constant changes in CMOs, which results in changes in agency selections. How do you take what's been accused of being a commoditized business, not the media business, the agency business, where you've been measured on how cost-effective you are in your compensation from your clients? How do you differentiate your product and service from the other agencies and holding companies to really create value as opposed to being measured strictly on what your compensation costs are?
Well, in terms of being differentiated as an agency network, I would still say that we're the largest digitally integrated network out there, and that's paid dividends in the last 18 months with the amount of global and regional consolidations that we've been awarded. So the proof has been in the pudding, most definitely. I think that's quite critical, because being digitally integrated gives us more of a license to put data and technology at the heart of everything that we do. We're still not there yet. Still got a way to go. But we're learning very, very quickly. We've got a lot of tech-focused clients, a lot of .coms within our own portfolio, and that helps us evolve our model, I think, faster than some of our competitors. So it's really pushing us.
Well, thank you. Rishad Publicis has also argued that it's one of the more, if not the most, digitally integrated company. How would you say that Publicis, as a holding company, and a couple of the agencies within it, units within it, are looking to differentiate your company versus the competitors?
So I think the first thing to recognize is, before I specifically answer that, is a couple of landscape things. The first is, we're in it's sort of a tale of two cities, which is, we're in an amazing time and a tremendously difficult time. The reason it's an amazing time is everyone talks about people being in control, consumers being in control, customers being in control, which actually should therefore mean it's an amazing time for marketing, because marketing is understanding and meeting customer requirements. And for all this time that I've been supposedly in the business, we haven't actually done marketing. We've done logistics and distribution and a whole bunch of other things. I mean, we have done marketing. We exaggerated. We really have to do marketing. And to a great extent, why it is a crisis is when you go to our clients, marketing no longer controls the agenda. So what you have is, marketing is more important than ever before, but it's not marketers you're dealing with, you're dealing with CFO lights. And that is a massive crisis. And so they naturally basically go to very silly things. So part of the problem is our clients need to get guts again.
Need to
get some guts and become true marketers, versus thinking that they can do this just with financial engineering, which they won't able to do anymore. So they really have to do that. So with that being said, you have this massive crisis for the very simple reason that if marketing is important, everyone's cutting budgets. Everyone's saying, we're age of transformation, we need to have more resources, but we don't fund any resources. Then you sort of say innovation should be free, which is, it's like saying content should be free, but innovation should be free. It's really hard. So I think one of the key things that we're going to see over the next few years is clients are going to differentiate themselves. That in effect, The question I'm going to ask clients is, what makes you special? Because we have to turn this around, which is we need to basically figure out a way to work for the best clients versus just hanging around and being selected. You know, I would love to basically do reviews of clients as clients do reviews of agencies. And I'm not kidding. Eventually, the reason why that's true is clients actually buy that stuff. What they do is they're creating a two-toned model. One is they're basically expecting massive commodity pricing from their large partners, and they're paying very good prices to boutiques. So in effect, one of the key things is, and what they're saying is this part doesn't add that much value, or there is waste. This part adds significant value, and I'm willing to pay.
But that would suggest that, you know, you could go into a Walmart and have, which is low price every day, but have a department within Walmart that gives real value and that charges higher price. Walmart would argue that wouldn't work.
It could, but so getting back to your answer, to the question of how we differentiate. So I think there are two ways we differentiate. First of all is, I think the differentiation should not necessarily be with other agency holding groups, because I think all of us are pathetic. Okay, relative to where the world is going, we all have to have a long way to go. So we are way behind, I think, our clients' customers. We're not behind our clients. We are behind our clients' customers, which is the end person. And our clients are behind the end person. So if we can focus our clients on people, what do they want, how have they been newly empowered? So when a client tells me I'm going to empower my customer, I said, it's too late, they're already empowered. How are you going to align with their empowerment? So the thing is, we must fixate on people rather than fixate on competitors or categories. So that's one. The second is, I think all agency structures are, the line I use is, it's sort of a riff of Clay Christensen's book, which is Innovator's Dilemma, is the future does not fit in the containers of the past, right? All existing businesses, including our clients' businesses, have been optimized for the past. So how do we actually optimize businesses, structures, incentives, and talent for the future? It won't happen overnight. It's a 5-6 year really hard slog, but that's what we sort of do. What we're trying to do at Publicis, and hopefully it will succeed, is we're trying to restructure certain things. So we over the last 2 years have spent $2 billion, which, you know, with all the multiple billions of dollars that people spend, it might be nothing. But in our category, $2 billion is 1/3 of our market cap, okay? Because all the agencies have no market cap worth talking about. So it's 1/3 of our market cap.
I think we pointed out earlier that the
Goldman Sachs bonus pool is larger than the market cap of the large 4 ad holding companies. Okay, so that gives you an idea of, like, when we say who's better, well, it's all 4 of us are cockroaches. What's the hell? You know, it doesn't matter. Let's think about where the world can go versus, you know, relative. And the reason also is when we start fighting with each other, we drive this down to pricing, which is stupid. The thing we're trying to do is we made these acquisitions, whether they were Digitas or Razorfish or Performix, et cetera, and we're connecting them to the media companies. So what we're doing is we're saying there's digital and there is money flow. And how do you make sure that all 100% get properly allocated, even though for most clients, 80 to 90% happen to be in analog media. And they will for the next 5 years for most categories.
that requires integration.
It requires massive structural change. It's a huge cultural change, because if you look at digital people and traditional media people, it's Venus and Mars. It's very different. So
I'll ask the full panel, is this integration happening fast enough? Fast enough to make those of us in the room who need it to happen for our futures successful in the next couple of years?
Well, I still think we have to be mindful of who we're servicing and how fast they're changing, because we're
but
still...
Rishad would argue it's up to you, I think, Rishad, to put words in your mouth, it's up to you to tell them they have to change more quickly. You can't let them lead.
We do, but ultimately, you know, the people who we interface with, the CMOs, procurement directors, etc., they have a string of priorities, and we have to ensure that we are still servicing their needs above all else. The moment you start, the moment you stop servicing your customers' needs, do you have a business left? I don't think you do.
Well,
so we just have to be mindful. Of course, we push and challenge our clients, but we still have to be mindful of the space that they're in and the pace of change that they can accommodate. I mean, this year, for example, with the automotive industry, they have had other fish to fry. They have had other priorities to focus on. Now, one could say that if you'd accelerated them further in terms of progression in digital marketing, then maybe 2009 wouldn't have been so rough. Hindsight is a beautiful thing. I mean, we all didn't see the credit crisis coming. But I just, in terms of the way that we run our organisation, we just make sure that when we're talking to our multinational companies that we're still servicing their needs, because the moment we stop doing that, we are in trouble.
Universal McCann has gone into the market with a presentation to their clients that basically says they perceive their role as serving the media seller and looking for the best ideas from the media sellers and then being the media seller's agent to their clients. So they're becoming more of an intermediary. And they've won 3 pieces of business with this presentation and are doing quite well. Is that concept of the agency rather than being the gatekeeper to the, between the media seller, being the facilitator of the best ideas? Is this a different approach?
I'm not sure how that applies to all media, but in digital media I think it's the involvement of the media owner or technology company in the planning process is now, I think, critical. I think that if you look at TV or if you look at print, the evolutionary stages of those media being glacial in relation, or if you compare them to digital. I don't think you can keep up with the pace of change with Google, Facebook, Microsoft if you're a media planner. I don't think you can keep up to the extent that you can plan effectively or leverage those assets effectively. I think you need the media owner or the technology company to hopefully be involved at a far earlier stage because we probably have a better appreciation of what's coming and therefore could be leveraged in your communications. And
you talk about the media owner being involved. We've seen a number of presentations here over the last couple of days of early stage companies with some very good, innovative, interesting ideas that serve advertisers and their needs. If I'm paraphrasing Maurice's comments yesterday, he said that there's only enough advertising dollars to probably serve 15 to 20% of the companies that are seeking those dollars. How does the agency serve your clients' needs and serve as a facilitator and conduit for all of these great ideas that are emerging? And how do you sort from the worthwhile from the frivolous?
I think you do a few things. The first is you have to go to the client and tell them, A, the truth, the best you know it, and B, point them into a direction where there is hope. Because if they behave the way they currently do, it means they've given up hope. And you don't want clients who've given up hope, right? I mean, that's the reality. And find the right client. Because the client may no longer be the media client. The client may no longer be the advertising client. The client might be somewhere completely different. The interactions that most people have are not necessarily with media anymore, as to where a lot of this world goes. That's one. The second thing that I think is very important is you partner aggressively by having groups of people that you invest in that figure out what's going on with all the young startups. You have another group of people who work very closely with all the big guys. We've done all of that. We've now got a group that just hangs out with the big guys. We have a group that hangs out with the small guys. And then we sort of inform each other and sort of move forward. The other one that's very, very important is what we cannot be also in a place is be sort of an intermediary, because there's no need for an intermediary. There is a need for understanding what the client wants, but more importantly, what the client's customer wants, and figuring out that, and then knowing what the palette of colors are, and partnering very much with outside people, because the other thing in our industry is going to be very hard to vertically integrate if the world is changing so fast. If the world is changing so fast and you're vertically integrated, I'm sure you're going to be selling what you got versus what's needed. So it's a huge structural, challenge, but I do believe this is the time for the marketing and ad industry to put real talent in front of clients and basically go back to saying, let's go and truly meet customer requirements and let's go make money, versus let's sell ads.
Let's go to the audience. Are there some questions in the audience that we can take? Any hands? We need some more coffee. You know, as we look at the shift from, if the analogy that I used earlier, going from the agrarian age to the industrial age, and we're now in the middle of a 30-year period going from the industrial/information age into the relationship age. And it's all about relationships, all about the conversation, about social network, about gaming, engagement. Yet we hold on to the traditional metrics of, you know, ratings and audience size, scale, impressions, and there is no currency yet that's legitimate for engagement or ROI. So as you look at, you know, we have clicks and other things, but in terms of, you know, how do we sustain newspaper, television, magazine advertising? Do you see new currencies evolving in the United States and in Europe and Asia?
I definitely think there is more pressure to develop new currencies. I mean, we've started now aggressively rolling out purchase funnel planning, and obviously each client has a different purchase funnel, and many of those purchase funnels have been completely rebooted by the power and importance of social media. But trying to figure out and that's back to your how do you create a kind of a checklist of media, trying to work out what media activity triggers which stage of which purchase funnel and why is what we're spending a lot of time doing. And to Damian's point, we're doing that in partnership with the media owners because we have to. Because they, in many respects, they know their product, they know their consumer better than we do. That's why I wouldn't ever want to say that OMD is an intermediary. I'm quite passionate about the fact that the digital revolution opens the street completely and gives us a fantastic opportunity to be fully fledged marketing investment managers, which is how I see us going forward. I do think we have to be mindful that might demand different skill sets, and there's going to be pressure on us to train our people, but also maybe churn so that we get the right skills into the company. That is going to be critical in terms of delivering on that opportunity. But I think that the pressure on performance metrics and new currencies is huge, because a lot of clients will say, well, why am I advertising there? You know, it has to be shifting a stage of my purchase funnel, delivering a test drive, you know, a call to action in some shape or form, or a brand equity shift in terms of more qualitative analysis. It has to be achieving some sort of output and outcome. Otherwise, what is the point of spending the money?
I'll put forth 3 ideas. The first is marketing has been outsourced to the end consumer. Category after category, we do self-marketing. When you do a search engine, you go to a review site, you get social recommendations from friends, you're marketing to yourself. So my first recommendation to CMOs is to change their title, become chief facilitation officers. If facilitation is what you're doing, start having metrics against facilitation. How many people search, how many spread, how many do things. There's an entire facilitation, that's number one. Second is, I'm quite convinced that the amount of money that's gone to reach media in the United States, and it's different in different parts of the world. So in India, it's exploding, and so I'll start with just the US. The amount of money going to reach media peaked in 2007, will never go back, even inflation adjusted, unless there's hyperinflation. It's moving to performance, but it's also moving to 2 other media. One is earned, and one is owned. And people don't seem to recognize that earned and owned have very separate metrics. So earned media, when someone says, I want a viral program, the question I ask is, Mr. or Mrs. Client, can you tell me under what niche, under what specific niche, you have a superior product or service? If you have one, we can do something. If you don't have one, don't do any marketing, make a superior product or service against that niche. The only way you get positive word of mouth is by superior product or service. Everything else is total bullshit, subservient chicken, all that. Makes no. You don't want people to talk about your advertising. You want people to feel better about your brands and services. So that's the other thing. Earned media, because of the fact that distribution you no longer have to pay for, to a certain extent because of the internet. Clients are creating massively fantastic experiences. Because if you look at reach and frequency, if you have one fantastic experience, do you really need frequency? You don't. Reach and frequency is that I'm going to have a bunch of piss all over the place, right? But take one shitload and be done, right? and so what happens is when you think of that, think of like Nike Plus.
It's been more nicely put as spray and pray or throw it up
Right.
against the wall and see what sticks.
But you think of something like Nike Plus, the Nike Plus website. If you look at the metrics of it, that's done by RGA, they have about 180 million miles have been run by people who go to that site. There are about 5 million people who go there. Every person on average buys $17 more of product in the course of a year. So that's $85 million. Let's say Nike makes $20 million, 20% of that, that's 17 million. It costs 5 million to run that. That's earned media. That's owned media. You're going to see much more owned, much more earned, right? Much more performance. And all separate metrics against those three.
And what Nike did, they took that running program and they created a beautiful coffee table book. And everyone who ran had the opportunity to buy that book or to get that book and buy a custom cover where they're on the cover individually. Yes. So there was a picture of every single one of them. So they really created that personal experience.
And so the key is recognizing how people are changing, how marketing is changing, and then putting the right metrics against each section of marketing. We keep thinking that there is this number, right? A click makes a lot of sense in search. A click makes no sense in display. So why do we consider click to be the right answer? It isn't. We think that exposure is the right answer, and may is the right answer for TV. It's not the right answer for something else. So I think the entire industry needs an injection, right, to wake up and smell the coffee and to actually think versus bringing in old models into the new world.
Damian, Nikki and Rishad have been talking about the changes that are needed in their businesses. What are the changes that Google needs to implement within its own business today?
I think we need to over-communicate. I think there's a lot of misinterpretation of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I think we need to just keep getting a lot closer.
What's the number one misperception that you would like to correct?
Well, I guess the disintermediation strategy that sometimes was talked about a couple of years ago. But I think the best way to counter that is to look at how we act with agencies and how we invest within the agency ecosystem. So, we've been working to, we train thousands of people every year from the agency world. We invest in driving operational efficiencies for agencies in terms of systems and tools. And that's not a strategy of disintermediation. That's a strategy of enablement, I think, and attempting to support that. So, we just need to keep over-communicating and making sure they realise our intentions are to support them because they're very valuable to us.
And as a final question, meet the value of a media brand. We just saw Condé Nast close 4 brands, including the legendary Gourmet brand. We're seeing the erosion and the inability of the broadcast networks to fund the types of long, multiple-season, tremendous network television brands that have existed over the years, even though I would argue we're in a golden age of media brands right now, and we may never see the quality of brands we have right now. The industry doesn't seem structured to be able to continue to fund and support those brands. Is that a problem for marketers?
I would say, brands are more important now than they've ever been. Because in fact, the best search engine in the world is a brand. A bad brand is a terrible thing too, because it's a great lighthouse, don't come here. But brands tend to be beacons, and even when you look at young people, they are much more brand driven. And when you look in Asia, they're much more brand driven than has ever been. So brands matter, which is one. And brands, by the way, are created not just by math, which is what people don't seem to realize. How a brand is created is intrigue, cultural resonance, and desire, plus performance. The other 3 are not math. Apple, for instance, or even Google. Google's brand is not created just by math, even though they're all math people, right? So there's that. With that being said, I think for media brands, the problem has been a media brand has been the content and the quality of that brand and the distribution. And that has been rendered apart. So if the brand is the distribution conduit, that's working less and less. If the brand is something else, it's different. Now, for instance, when you consider like the New York Times, is the New York Times the brand, or is Maureen Dowd and Thomas Friedman the brand? Right? Because it's being disaggregated. So I think brands will matter, but it'll be a different kind of brands.
Mm-hmm. Nikki, you care to add to that? Or
Well,
anything you'd like to say as a final comment?
Yeah, I don't think it causes us a problem because we still have such a focus on consumer passion points. And if, you know, those passion points are best described by some media brands, I know I'm a lover of Vogue and Grazia and TV brands like Desperate Housewives, etc. If you can still articulate a person's media consumption behaviour through usage of media brands and passion points, then it doesn't cause marketers or ourselves a problem at all. It just throws up more opportunity. It doesn't cause us a problem.
Good. And I didn't warn you that I was going to ask this question, so I'm actually happy to put you on the spot. But if you could recommend to the audience one book, website, or app that you would highly recommend that they read, download, or use. Rishad?
The book is The Sorrows and Joys of Working by Alain de Botton. It's fantastic, so that would be the book. The application, if you like eating, is OpenTable, which is an application that helps you find and make reservations for restaurants. And as far as a blog goes, I would not suggest one blog, but I would suggest all of you all download My Sixth Sense, which was presented today. Then subscribe to as many blogs as you want, and only the best stuff will come to the top.
Great. And it's free, correct?
It's free.
Okay, I'll go
Yes.
first. I won't recommend a book, because I think they date far too quickly these days. An app, I'd recommend the Telegraph app on Android. I love that at the moment. And a blog, I always find Rob Norman and his on-demand blog well worth reading. So
Rob is now writing also for Media Biz Bloggers, so I'll put in a plug for one of my companies.
okay, there you go.
And
You specifically, Tom Friedman. I know it's quite old now, but still one of the best books I've ever read, World is Flat, which we've distributed across our own network to try and globalize the mind. Anything gossipy, Perez Hilton.
well, that tells us a little about you, doesn't it?
Yes, and Grazia Online. So anything sort of trashy like that. And Robert Preston, BBC.
Good. Well, I have become a big fan of the Kindle and e-readers in general, and as a result of that, I'm reading more frequently, more books. I'm also downloading and paying for blogs, Huffington Post and paid content.org and others on the Kindle. But a book called The Family by Jeff Charlotte. Any number of interesting apps, but I like Yelp a lot and found that terrific. And anyone have Bump on their Apple? So we should all get together later and just bump. And do you have Bump on the Android?
I'm not aware of it.
Okay, we need to do that.
Okay, I'll check it out.
And all the reviews on Bump on the Android are extremely positive, so congratulations on that. Do we have time for the one question?
Yeah, we have time for one question. Or there are two, sorry. Two,
Okay.
one there, one here.
Sorry I didn't come back to you guys. I gave you a chance, I didn't know. We can get a microphone
Yeah,
up
he's
here.
got it back in the corner.
Or you can yell it out if you
No,
want.
he's fine. Go.
Okay.
Hi, I just had a quick question on, we talked about the structure of the agency, the traditional structure, the holding company structure may not be valid anymore. Is there a consensus is being driven towards what the right structure of a agency of the future may be? Given, it was discussed that digital and technology has to be at the heart of it. So if panelists can, comment on that.
My sense is that it's going to be a model of models. There's no longer going to be one structure. That the holding companies will have multiple structures operating in sort of, once we get our act together, it'll be somewhat using the similar words as the words used in the technology world, which is platforms, ecosystems, and continuous iteration.
I think for us, what is quite a challenge is to structure either the holding company or even the Omnicom Media Group around our clients' business, because increasingly we are the eyes and ears, arms and legs of our multinational clients. We are the support network and the distribution network for them. So it's very challenging to create the right fully integrated structure globally to service their needs, but at the same time create a structure that sits very well within a holding company to at least manage the money. So that is an interesting challenge, and I think we're going to see a lot of structural change in our companies going forward, positively, but around our clients' business, so that we can actually take advantage of the new distribution platforms that basically expedite speed to market on their behalf.
We had one more question here,
Yeah, Barack here.
or I guess
Yeah.
I guess
Can we
two.
get
All right, we'll
Oh,
take that,
all
and
right.
then we'll have
Very quick questions, though, please.
quick question, quick answer.
Okay. I happen to be a CMO of a company. We have a superior product, and we have a very narrow niche. I've been shopping for an agency for months now. Trying to get an agency to give me a client briefing document, like, okay, a document where I could tell me everything I need to hit my niche and how much it would cost, can't get a straight answer. Where can I go to get that answer? Get a sense of, okay, what needs to be on my list for my marketing budget for 2010, and how much is it going to cost me? At least an average, at least a range.
I'll give you my card after this.
But there's no public document, there's no common sense document yet for the new media world for marketing?
There are lots of common sense documents, but we have to question you before we tell you what you need.
That is
Thanks.
why, I mean, that's ultimately why our business is becoming so resource intensive, because there isn't one size that fits all. It has to be specific to your needs. So there's no such thing now as just a standard briefing form.
Okay. Last question to Barack.
So you mentioned before that there is crisis and great opportunity. So let's avoid the crisis for a second and let's discuss about the opportunity. 5 years from now, 6 years from now, how do you envision the relationship between brands to user, to their clients, and what would be the role of the agencies?
I would say that the roles of the agencies, or what will be some federation of talent that works for clients, will be A, to serve the voice of the customer and the consumer, will be one. 2, to make sense of the landscape for the client. And 3, to serve as continuity and a distribution network as clients come and go.
And as I said before, I really do see our role as marketing investment specialists, and that actually is quite a huge umbrella statement. So there's a huge expansion opportunity for a media agency network to operate within that umbrella. But really, in terms of the migration to CMOs having dictated the brand, rational and emotional, to the consumer now, dictating what a brand stands for, I think media agencies need to definitely get closer to the consumer to bring consumer and corporation together, because they're still way too separate.
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, if I can keep it very short, I think there's never been a better opportunity for an agency to become more integrated with their client's business. I think if you look at the kind of traditional media model, the agencies are expert in placing media for the right price at the right time in the right place. And then what happens with that consumer when they interact with the brand is out of the agency's control in many respects. You know, they could have a bad in-store experience, poor customer service in the shop, or a dreadful, call center. That linkage isn't broken online. If you are doing what Omnicom do and WPP and the rest of them do, and you're pushing these messages out, you can follow that consumer right the way through to the brand online, to their website, and you can affect change, and you can look at usability, you can look at bounce rates, you can drive the bottom line of the business in a far more impactful way. And I think that's an opportunity for agencies, the kind of lineage of their involvement.
And I would add as a final thought that we're seeing a definite bifurcation of the marketplace between the commodity pricing-based media and the value-based media. And I believe we have to have integration where the media agency, the name media agency, will need to change, and there'll be those agencies that are basically in a technology-based exchange business of commoditization, of selling, of buying at the lowest possible price across multiple platforms for their clients. And there will be other companies that will be in the cross-marketing resource business that'll have to cut across digital, and it'll not just have to cut across different media platforms, but the marketing platforms as well, the promotional platforms, the event marketing, the public relations, cause-related, because that's where there's $500 billion sitting that's waiting for the media industry to go and get it. So Rishad Tobaccowala, Nikki Mendonça, Damian Burns, terrific panel. Thank you very much.